Judge Perez, before the hearing, you were speaking to some of the wonderful things you see in your courtroom. Could you give us a couple of examples? Judge Abbott just has given us one little read of testimony. What are some of yours?
I think when they graduate and their graduation speeches, many of them are moving just like that. Because we're not just helping the veteran. Standing next to the veteran when they graduate is their wife, their kids, or their husband, their kids, their parents, their extended family, who have all suffered through this. And to see them get reintegrated, they're not using anymore, they've got a job, they feel like they're doing something positive, they got their license, and to see them stand in front of others and with their families next to them, that's moving to me, because we're not just affecting the veteran. We're affecting everyone that's around that veteran, because war comes home to the family. And to see the change, the metamorphosis in these veterans is extraordinary. From when they first come in to when they graduate, to see them during the course of their year and a half to help out others. It's innate in them to help out others. In the field, that would be the first thing they do. I got a combat medic who lost a huge number of his Marines in combat. And when I took someone into custody, he sat there right next to him and wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave that Marine. He was a Navy corpsman. And to see that, it's just extraordinary. That's why I say there's so many times I wish you could just see it. We're a mentor court. I invite everyone to come down and watch one, and watch the interaction, and watch these young men and women come before me and stand straight, look you square in the eye and say, "Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor, I'll do that." It's an extraordinary experience.
These days, we're dealing with an awful lot more local commits because of things the state's doing. Let me back that up, though. A lot have come through CDCR. If you had any recommendations that we could deal with rehabilitatively in CDCR to be helpful. We had a young lady, Mary Thomas, come last week, who has a program for veterans at San Quentin. What kind of things could we do in custody for the state to have these individuals come out better successes?
I think, and I want to speak for the judge here, but I think their connection with other mentors. They have to be around, in my opinion, others that have been in the combat scenario, that have been in mortal danger for such a long period of time, that have pulled the trigger and seen people fall. To have someone that has gone through that experience, I think, is absolutely critical in a veteran's rehabilitation. To know that there's others that have gone through it, they've made it, and more importantly, to know that we as a society care about them. That's huge for them, and at least what I've seen in my court. So if we could send out mentors, have some sort of interaction between the Veterans Administration and maybe these mentors, and talking to them and telling them that there's other avenues for them to take, because there are other avenues. Many of my homeless that come into my homeless courts have no idea that we have a veterans office that can help them, you know, from A to Z. They can get them housing, they can stand them down. There's a stand down room. We can get them clothed, fed. They don't even know it exists. So just like leaving the military, they need to be schooled, just like those leaving CDC need to be schooled. But I think we need to have some sort of interaction between someone that's been in the same environment and them. It just changes. They know. They see it in their eyes. And I think that that's absolutely critical to getting the veterans back on their feet, sir.
We kind of focused on that, well, we didn't kind of, thoroughly last week with the veteran service officers to provide them better abilities to touch these veterans who are coming out. Let me now ask any of our colleagues here. We have Senator Roth would like to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Obviously, it's important to concentrate on the combat veterans with issues, and that's what you're doing. As funding permits, however, I'd encourage you to take a look at the non-combat veterans who have experienced sexual assault, given the prevalence apparently of sexual assault in
We
the
take them.
military.
That's part of ours.
The non-combat veterans with
Sexual
sexual
assault, absolutely.
Perfect.
Without doubt, they come in.
Let me ask a question. It's on a little different subject. We will roll out as a state of California transitional and supportive housing over the next series of years, maybe in the thousands of beds. I'm concerned about the availability of mental health treatment and supportive services for these vets.
I didn't hear you, sir.
I'm concerned about the availability of mental health and supportive services for these veterans. And so my question to you is this: what obstacles, if any, do you experience in obtaining mental health treatment and related supportive services for those veterans who pass through your courts?
I don't know that we've experienced any obstacles in the time that we've been in existence in Sacramento. What I found is that the framework for receiving mental health services is actually very good.
Yes.
And one of the first things that happens to most of our vets is they go to the Veterans Center out here at Mather, and they take a course called PTSD 1, and they get an assessment right out of the chute by a qualified clinician who evaluates them for PTSD and also does an examination and evaluation for traumatic brain injury, because those are the two principal causes, if you will, of the challenges that they're facing. And there may be some substance abuse issues involved, but usually the substance abuse is the result of the PTSD or the traumatic brain injury. And what these people are doing is they're self-medicating based upon that. And I can only tell you that I have one vet who's a Vietnam vet in my program who suffered a traumatic brain injury and PTSD from his experience in Vietnam. And for 40 years, he was experiencing daily headaches, and he was medicating with alcohol. It took 40 years before he got pulled over and arrested for DUI. But now he's in our program, and he's actually a success story. But he's finally getting attention for the PTSD and the traumatic brain injury.
And this is attention through the U.S. Department of Veterans?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do the counties provide any mental health service support?
Not that I'm aware of.
Our primary caretaker for our veterans is the VA, and I got to echo what Judge Abbott says. I've had nothing but absolutely, they have been just phenomenal in their care of our veterans.
The psychiatrist, for example, that
Yes,
you
sir.
called to court, was that a USDVA psychiatrist?
It was a VA psychiatrist from Long Beach. Yes, sir.
Have you had occasion to ask for any sort of mental health treatment or support services from either Orange County or the county up here in Sacramento? And if so, what was the response?
Well, not usually, because the VA is the primary caretaker within my court. You know about the new PC 1001.80 diversion. I think we may start seeing the healthcare agency get involved. We do have a healthcare agent within our team, but the primary caretakers is the Federal Veterans Administration. So.
Have there been any difficulties in securing, other than participation in the PTSD course, have you observed any difficulties in veterans being able to secure timely mental health treatment appointments from the USDVA facilities?
No, sir.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions of members? Okay. Let's talk about funding just a little bit. There has to be a local priority in the county, and if Orange County's been thriving, Senator Nguyen's had some hands on that. But tell me, how about your funding? And you, Judge Perez, because you've been down the trail a while, and then now you're just getting started here, Judge Abbott. So how about Orange County? What got kicked off in Orange County?
Well, the good thing is that we have these team members that have bought into it. So the probation department covers their probation officer. The DA covers their person, the public defender covers their person. So it's not the court necessarily that's taking on those costs. The funding for treatment goes through the Veterans Administration. So where our funding, where we save the money, is keeping people out of jail. And because they're not in jail, we're saving money to the county. They're not, especially under 1170H, which is now people are serving prison terms in the county jail. We're keeping them out, which is also saving the county money. So for the court itself, it's actually not that bad because we got all of these players that are getting paid for by other agencies and not the court itself. And we're also saving the county money because we're keeping people out of jail. And as you can see with our recidivism rate, we're keeping them out for a long period of time, sir.
You're giving us very good statistics that would be helpful to continue support.
Yeah, Judge has,
Abbott?
he has better numbers than I do, but I can only tell you that when we got started, basically we didn't have anything. We had no extra funding. I'm a civil trial judge, and I got started in this program because I was approached by representatives of the district attorney and the public defender. And we started out with a volunteer from the probation office who was going to be there to help us with some of the probation issues, performing voluntary drug testing, for which we had no funding. Eventually, we actually got a funded probation officer, which we now have, and we were able to secure a grant through the VA, through the feds, that's, I believe it's $125,000 a year for 3 years. So that was our first grant, and which we're using that to underwrite our efforts in pursuing some of the testing and the supervision and oversight that's so critical to seeing progress. So yeah, funding's an issue, and but I think we're saving our county just about as much money as Orange is saving theirs.
Senator Nguyen has a question.
Actually, I
Then
don't
back
have
to
a question.
Senator
If
Roth.
I can just add to what Judge Perez mentioned is, in Orange County, we do a lot of collaborative courts.
Yes.
And it has been successful one after another for us. And it is, you know, with the working of the Sheriff Department, the DA's office, the probation, the public defender, and the Board of Supervisor, and our CEO, your presiding judge, throughout the years. And so it's more of trying to figure out how we can do this in a collaborative way. That's why they're called collaborative courts, to transport these individuals, if they are currently in jail, in a more effective, efficient way of doing it, and to get them into programs and treatments. Because, you know, especially with the veteran side, you know, there are things that I think in Orange County we do really well. There are things that are lacking on our part as well, and I just recently saw the article. But, you know, Orange County itself, in terms of collaborative courts, we've done a very good job.
And thank you. Thank you for your support. And we are keeping people from coming back. At the end of the day, when they walk out, the whole job is to try to keep them from ever coming back. And for the most part, we're doing a pretty darn good job. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm sort of a proponent of performance metrics, and I see Orange County has some. How do you keep your statistics? Is this a locally generated process, or is this something that's mandated or suggested by the Judicial Council?
No, it's done by us. It's locally done. We have our collaborative court director who helps put together these numbers. We have an annual report. I have one here from 2013. This is it here, sir. And we'll have one from 2014 that pretty much lays out all the statistics of all of our collaborative courts. And as the senator indicated, I oversee homeless court. I oversee all mental health courts, people that are very, very sick. And oftentimes these things cross over. Drug and alcohol court, DUI court, and drug court, I oversee that as well, and veterans court. So I have my own little satellite court, thank you, that we have, that people come to it. And anyone can come off the street and come into our court and seek help.
Well, I'd suggest you circulate that to the Judicial Council if you haven't, because it's a best practice that probably should be applied throughout the state. Thank you for what you do, both of you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
And Your Honor, if you'd be so kind as to get one of those reports to committee so we can distribute to the members and have one for our own records. I thank you very much. Oh,
Can I just,
Senator
one
Hueso.
line of questioning that I don't think was brought up a lot. I'd like to hear a little bit on your views on, or just what is the source of funding for the program? I was reading this and it mentioned how a downturn in the budget affecting the courts
It has.
affected the program. So the program isn't specifically funded. it's not funded directly through the state, but by directing the court, by directing funds to the court system, you can direct it into a program like this. Are there other sources of funds?
I know that there are. I'm not an expert in that area. We have a collaborative court director that handles that, but for the most part, it's, as the senator said,
If I can add, it's really, it's the court that has to put some, they would put the judge to oversee the certain programs and have the facility, but the county also does a lot of helping out finding facilities and also funding that from our side for our general fund.
yes.
But the rest, though, the staffing and everything comes from the different departments.
Yes.
So it's already automatic. It's for us, it's priority. And this system has worked well for the County of Orange. And, you know, I don't remember if it came, I don't think it came from the Board of Supervisors. I wish I could take credit. But I think it,
You
it
should
really,
take a little credit, by the way. Yes, you should.
It really, I mean, it's everybody coming together.
Yes.
And we do, we have many committees at the county that oversee children issues. That includes all the players I mentioned and more. We have, other committees, criminal justice committee as well, that includes all the players. And
Right.
so we would meet monthly just to talk about what works, what hasn't worked, what can we expand, what can we bring forward as a policy. And so they're public meeting, but very informal meeting on the 5th floor of the Board of Supervisors in the conference room. I've been on most of those committees in the past. And so it's really, at the end of the day, it's not a direct funding for the courts specifically. It is, if you're going to say funding for courts, it's pretty much your judge and
Yes.
your admin staff.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to prioritize, and the rest actually comes from the different departments at the county. And we on the Board of Sup are pretty stringent on terms of budget.
Yes.
So all the department knows, and it's a priority. It's literally what it's called, a collaborative effort on everybody's part. So
couldn't-
they'll chip in here and there from everybody.
We couldn't do it without their support, and we couldn't do it without the support of the others at the table. Let me just give you a number. In the collaborative courts in Orange County, as of 2013 annual report, saved $12 million in bed space, jail bed space. So, but we can't do it without you. We couldn't do it without the supervisor's help. You know that, and we can't do it without the other supports. We bring everyone together. But the thing is, they see it and they know it works. And once they see that, and you see that it's helping and it's saving money, you're helping these folks and you're saving money. It's just it's a win-win situation. And again, we can do it without you.
Yeah, and we're also looking. I know that before I left, there was other talks about different types to add to that.
Yes.
Even having a collaborative courts inside the jail, so the transport costs of inmates to and from jail, and also saves a lot of time as well as maybe looking at something inside the jail. And so I know our sheriff has been leading charge and doing so. There's a lot of collaboration. We might not always agree all the time, but definitely, we can always respectfully disagree. But then looking at the different constituents that we all serve, I think it's better that we pile our pennies together and to make it into a dollar.
Yes. And again, thank you very much. It's
Senator
nice to see
Hueso,
you.
any further?
That's fine.
I did want to add, and when we talked about funding, I became aware in January of this year that the Judicial Council had set aside in the court budget $1.5 million to underwrite programs in collaborative courts. So veterans treatment courts, drug court would all be eligible for some of that money. I've been working with one of our court admin people to try to find out the best way to make an application for some grant money from that, but I haven't got any answers yet. But I know it's available. At least I've been told it's available.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think, what Senator Roth mentioned is the transitional housing is the other component that we really need to look into the future.
Absolutely.
Because as much as you can help everybody and put them through programs, but at the end of the day, they don't have a place to live and a place to call home. It's a whole different story.
Yes, ma'am.
And you can rebound and you can go back to where you started. And so I think with the proposition, with all the helps of everybody across the state and getting that passed, I think it's going to be very instrumental because you can go from A to Y, but you never finish to Z, and then they can start all over again.
Right.
And I think that's where is the transitional housing, mental health housing, and all those that's going to compound into the future. I think it's going to, at least I hope, that will allow some of these veterans to be able to say, I'm home.
It will be huge.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. Hang
you
around. We
all.
may have
Thank
some
you.
further
Thank you very much.
questions. We will proceed to our next panel. This is going to talk to a series of people, and if you could come forward, Duncan McVicker, Scott Franklin, Robin Sheckley, David Grillo, and Kerry Reeves. We're going to talk about the multidisciplinary team and the nuts and bolts of how we make this all work. I think we've got enough seats for everybody here.
Yeah, there's 6 chairs, so 5 of us.
We'd ask you to identify yourselves and then begin, if you can pass the microphone around. Let's start over on the right-hand side, my right. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you. My name is Duncan McVicker. I am with the California Veterans Legal Task Force. We're a small nonprofit, and we are in our purpose is to support veterans treatment courts. So what I do principally is travel around Northern California, helping counties that want to start a veterans treatment court to do so, gathering the team together, walking through the preparation of the protocol and such. Given that, I have a perspective on veterans treatment courts, which I would like to share with you for just a moment. First, there are 22 such courts here in California. They're located in 20 different counties. Los Angeles County and Santa Barbara County each have 2. I can identify 3 counties that will start up new ones this year. We're starting about 3 or 4 each year. A veterans treatment court is collaborative in nature, as we've discussed. The team is the key to the success of veterans treatment court is that team of people that surrounds the judge. One person from the district attorney's office, one from the public defenders, one from the federal department of VA, etc. But the truly unique thing about veterans treatment courts is the mentoring programs. And I'd say they are largely responsible for the remarkable success of these programs around the country. When you pair up a peer mentor with a veteran who's going through this troubled time in life, it makes things so much better for that veteran. You're able to toe the line, able to follow the judge's instructions, which a lot of these feisty guys would not do otherwise. Every county I found is different. There are personality differences in the county. There are structural differences in the court system and in the way they do things in the county. And consequently, every veterans treatment court turns out to be different in a lot of ways. And so they create protocols that are unique to that jurisdiction. But they all share the same benefits once they're up and running. First of all, as you've heard several times this morning, they all save money on less jail time for the county, and that's good for the local taxpayers. They also save money because the mental health therapy that is being provided and lots of other services are being provided by the federal VA, and consequently that's free to the local government as well. So these things, financially speaking, are really a good deal locally. More importantly, I would say, though, these veterans treatment courts are serving to take people and families who are not productive in our society and in fact have a lot of problems and turn them back around to being productive, contributing members of their local community. And I don't know how you even measure that, but every time we graduate somebody in one of these veterans treatment courts, we've accomplished that for that local community. Finally, to me, the most important measure and benefit of a veterans treatment court is that of lower recidivism rates. Now, I sure wish I could report statistically significant data to you, but these courts have only been around for 8 years, so they don't have that many graduates to report on having measured recidivism rates yet. The typical measurement being within 2 years after you're finishing a sentence, did you recommit a crime? And those recidivism rates in California, for instance, run about 40 or 50% for misdemeanors and around 70% for felonies. What I've learned in gathering data from around the country is many veterans treatment courts are still, after years of operation, reporting rates of 0. That's true in California as well, as you heard this morning here. The 10% from Judge Perez was a new number for me. Thank you, Judge Perez. That's another data point for me. The largest veterans treatment court in the country is Santa Clara County. Judge Stephen Manley tells me that his rate of recidivism is running around 13%. And that's the largest number I've heard from any court in the country. So these veterans treatment courts, anecdotally at least, are really bringing home the bacon to the people of that community and the state that they're located in because of those benefits. I'd like to add just a couple of things about funding. There's a lot of interest in funding earlier, and I'd just like to tell you from my own experience here in Northern California, I've been on the founding of 8 different veterans treatment courts. 7 of them started without any funding at all. The 8th one waited until a grant was available and then started their court, and they used that money principally, Carrie, I'm right, I think, to hire what they call a case manager who actually coordinates the court and stays in touch with each of the veterans that are in the court.
Correct.
Yeah, that is thematic throughout veterans treatment courts. It's this coordinator function that traditionally has been the function of the court, a court employee, for coordinator for your drug court or for your mental health court or whatever, keeps tracks of all the people and gathers all the data that's required for the team to do their deliberations. That's the place where funding can be needed if that type of individual is not available. And with the cutbacks in budgets, even to the court systems in recent years, this coordinator position has been harder and harder to come by as we start veterans treatment courts. And I'm finding that a probation officer will step up and say, I'll do it. I know one county where a county veteran service officer is doing it, one county where a assistant district attorney is doing it, and there are a number of counties also where somebody from county behavioral health is doing it. So the key is, if you want to get this veterans treatment court started, you can do it, and I can show you 7 of 8 counties. However, as time goes on and your
Chair,
court
if I
grows.
can just intervene just
Senator
on
Hoyser.
that point, because you're talking about funding and you're talking about people that do the same job with different titles. Is there any way to standardize that and see if there's a way that the state can help support those positions for the job they do? Because it is a court function or a judicial function, but it's also a veteran service.
That's right. Well, this will only be a personal opinion now, but this is a function that's provided by the courts, by the Judicial Council, in most collaborative courts. That was the case up until this recession hit. And then we started reducing the budgets of courts. I've had court CEOs tell me that they've laid off 1/3 of all their coordinator and all their staff. So it's hard for them to conceive of allocating a slice of a person to get this new court started. So that's why we're going to all these other avenues to get voluntary help from other departments. It seems to me the best thing to do would be return to the original situation and fund the Judicial Council better so that they can fill those positions. I do have some other ideas on the subject, though, tying, for instance, funding of a court in the way of a grant to provision of data so that we can actually collect data, which is my next subject to talk about.
Okay. Do you have further testimony then on this point?
I do, and I'll be brief on this, because my position is I volunteered to be the evaluator on the Veterans Treatment Court in Alameda County. The best practices for veterans treatment courts across the country is that one of the 10 persons on the judge's team is this evaluator who gathers the statistics. So I'm gathering data. I gather data on individuals, like what was their offense, what was their discharge status from the military, things like that. And I gather statistics on things like how many people applied, how many people entered the court, how many have been terminated from the court for whatever reason, how many have graduated, things of that nature. Of course, we want to gather data on recidivism rate. Why to gather data? We want to improve our operations. We want to exchange data with other courts so that we can arrive at best practices around the state. And we want to improve our chances of being able to get grants. If you have data about any kind of an operation, your odds of getting a grant, and there are grants available from the federal government and the Judicial Council, your odds are better if you've collected some data so you have a story to tell. So that's the main reason we collect it. Now, I mentioned recidivism rates. The really good news is that's the most important news for legislators and for others around the country who are concerned about this process. And it seems to me that that's what we ought to hang our hat on. We ought to make sure that we are measuring recidivism. And if we can't get it done on a voluntary basis, I would certainly be in favor of doing something that would make sure that all veterans treatment courts, perhaps through the Judicial Council or whatever, do report on recidivism rates so we have at least that much, which is the single most important measure of how these courts are serving the people. Thank you very much.